Last week, it was reported that you have extensive stash, in fact, of video, emails, and other forms of documentation, emails and all sorts. Tonight, you've shared. Let's take a look at one of this video. It shows Michael Cohen boarding Donald Trump's plane in September of 2016, a pivotal time in the campaign. Let's watch.
You're broken my video.
My #1 photographer, man.
You were on my video, just so you know. Now I gotta stalk you. Michael, say bye.
Well, there he is, Omarosa, going to the front of the plane. He's on the campaign plane. This is in September of 2016, right in the midst of all these negotiations and machinations. What do you make of this tape? What's it tell us?
Well, the first thing that the campaign is going to do, and the first thing that the president is going to say is that Michael Cohen had nothing to do with the campaign. He was just a coffee boy. He wasn't involved. The reason I wanted to share this with you is, first of all, to show you that he was, in fact, involved with the campaign. Not only was he involved, he organized this particular trip to Cleveland. He spoke at this event. And then, as you could see us horsing around kind of after on the plane, and he said and met with the president during that trip. He was very involved. He was directing some of the things that were happening, and he was impacting the decisions that the president made, as well as the president telling him to fix things.
Okay, give me a preview of coming attractions. Because you are, I mean, has it been accurately reported that you have all kinds of things in terms of evidence?
Well, that was the first video I ever shared. And the reason I wanted to share it is, one, people are kind of demonizing Michael Cohen when, in fact, Donald Trump asked him to carry out these acts. And I think that's important to note.
Do you know that the president told him to lie about the purpose of paying off those women, that it was really a campaign contribution?
Well, I can't say if he asked him to lie, but he certainly asked him to protect Donald Trump, to protect him from his wife, to protect him from the country, and help him to get elected by hiding these lascivious
relations. Did he know about the Trump Tower meeting in June of 2016 with the Russians?
I believe so. And as Michael Cohen has stated,
how do you know?
Michael Cohen was very involved in helping to organize this. But not only that, during the campaign,
you know that as a fact?
I know that to be a fact. But also during the campaign, Donald Trump didn't hide his affinity for Russians. And I think it's ludicrous for people to say that we didn't hear about his desire to have a relationship with Putin during the campaign.
Was it part of the scuttlebutt of the campaign that he was trying to get dirt from the Russian government?
Well, I'm going to tell you that there was a time when we found out about these emails, and there's a debate as to when Donald Trump found out about them. But what's interesting is...
You mean about the hacking of the DNC?
The hacking of the DNC.
Yes.
And that's a big part of the Mueller investigation. So I'll be very careful there, because I have certainly been participating with them and cooperating with them. But I will say that all this will come out. Has
Mueller's people asked you about all this kind of thing, everything?
Well, I've had an opportunity to sit down with them. They asked me a wide range of questions. And as I said, I will continue to cooperate with them. So I'll be very careful. But I will say that today changed everything. This is the beginning of the end for Donald Trump.
Why?
Because he knows that the person who knows everything about him, about his relationships with these women and others that people may not know about, are going to come to light.
Let me go to Ken on this whole thing, and I want to go around the room here, because I think this guy knows a lot, and I get the feeling that his charges are light. I mean, he is a felon now. He can't vote. He can't be in a jury. Can't run for office, although that thing was not on the horizon for a while now. But Michael Cohen knows a lot, and if Omarosa's backing us up and everybody else, this guy was very much on the inside of everything with Trump. Isn't he Trump's worst nightmare, especially with all the documents that the FBI grabbed from his office, his hotel room, everything?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. He has visibility into a wide range of subjects of interest to Mueller and to investigators in the Southern District. And we're not just talking about the payoffs to the women. We're talking about throughout the campaign, as Omarosa documented on this video, he was in there. And we're talking about his business, Trump's business dealings before that. We know that he traveled the world. He rejects the claim that he was in Prague meeting with folks, but we know he was all over the world on behalf of Donald Trump and Donald Trump's business interests. We just see the tip of the iceberg of the types of things that Mueller might be interested in, that he has visibility into. I mean, he even worked with Elliot Broidy, this top fundraiser for Donald Trump, who also, the Washington Post reported, has been a subject of interest for investigators. So his tentacles reach.
I agree. Well, let me talk about those tentacles, because I want to tell him, has he got him, as Tom has the Southern District Court, they've cut the deal with them. They've got them in their tentacles, to use the phrase Ken used. They've got them in their clutches. How do they feed him now to provide information on Russia and everything else in this Pandora's box over to Mueller?
Sure. So Chris, any time that you cut a deal with the government, you can cooperate at any time with them, and any information you share federally, it's all one system. So there's
Sure.
if he's told them one certain thing that may be helpful to Special Counsel Robert Mueller, that's something they can share back and forth. And actually, there's a lot of crossover in the personnel between the two offices. So as far as information finding its way back to the Special Counsel, that's not going to be a problem here.
Katie, last question to you. Does this man, Michael Cohen, who seems sympathetic, and I think Omarosa has been sympathetic to him of late, right?
Yes, of course.
That he was a tough guy. He was basically a tough guy for Trump in the good old days, their old good old days. But now, is he in the control, basically, of the U.S. attorneys? Is he not a free man anymore? Does he have to basically talk when they tell him to talk and talk about what they want him to talk about, or else he faces real trouble beyond this? Your thoughts?
He's still in the driver's seat, though, Chris, because he has valuable information. And for purposes of your sentencing, the more you cooperate, the more your sentence is going to be lightened. And so 5 years could be less if he gives more valuable information on a variety of different topics.
If everybody knew about this situation, are they all liable? I mean, it seems to me, Katie, stick with you on this. How many people knew about it besides Trump and his fixer lawyer? Just the two of them? The amount of money, the payment, the deal they made to shut them up, to quiet them, to hush them up so that he could get through the election, get through the night, basically?
Well, remember, you also have Keith Davidson, who is the former lawyer that represented both Karen McDougal and Stormy Daniels. And so there's more people, including Keith Davidson, that have had information that would implicate Donald Trump as well.
And additionally, Chris, campaign finance laws speak to who has liability in this case, and it's the candidate in this case. Cohen is actually singling out the candidate, but a treasurer of a campaign committee also would have liability for an illegal transaction like that, and there could be others on the campaign.
How much did you know?
As well.
Well, I'll tell you, I was on the receiving end of one of these hush deals where Laura Trump called me to offer me a cushy job, $15,000 per month.
$180 a year.
Not say anything against this president. So they're in the business of trying to silence people and using campaign dollars to do that, which is illegal.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.